and welcome to Under the Umbrella. I'm WDTN Plus meteorologist Melissa Barrington, and on this show, we like to talk about a whole variety of different topics. And this week, we are talking about a refurbished wetland at Englewood MetroPark, and we have with us Kevin Ptacek, who is the Regional Conservation Manager for Five Rivers MetroPark. Hello and welcome, Kevin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, well, I'm so glad you could be with us here today. So we're focusing on the Englewood Metro Park. Let's just start with some history of the park. First of all, like how long has it been in existence?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Englewood Metro Park was officially opened to the public in about 1967. It's about 1,900 acres in size. It's definitely a critical piece of natural area along the Stillwater River corridor, which is a state national scenic river. Just preserving it from development has a large positive impact on the water quality and the habitat of the Stillwater River corridor. I think that land was set aside probably back in the 1920s when Englewood Dam was first built by Miami Conservancy District.
Okay. And so many folks may not realize that there's actually a wetland habitat located in the park, which I didn't know that, and it was once referred to as Englewood Lake. So can you give us some background about the area that was once the lake?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think a lot of people outside of our avid birders would walk right past and think it's just a lake. So it's actually a man-made system. It's a reservoir that was built originally. I think it was built to store floodwaters behind the dam during large rain events, which is essentially what it still does now. There's also other quality pieces of habitat benefits incorporated into that. So it is a man-made system, but it actually mimics a naturally occurring wetland called an oxbow. And I know a lot of people think of it as a lake, and that makes sense because oxbows begin as a lake.
Okay.
Oxbows are formed when a bend in the river is almost cleaved off from the rest of the river channel, and it creates a lake. Over time, in large rain events, as the floodplain floods and stores water, that lake, that oxbow lake, actually becomes a critical piece of habitat that stores sediment and all the pollutants in our watershed. So naturally, over time, oxbows start to sediment in and start becoming wetlands themselves. And that's kind of what you're seeing is a man-made system mimic that natural system that naturally occurs in our environment. And I think it's pretty difficult for folks to understand that because they see us manipulating our landscape, but they don't realize that these landscapes actually are dynamic. They're not static, and they change on their own through natural processes along the way.
That's really interesting. So these areas, do they fill up with like species of fish or birds, or what consists of the water? Is it just water and bugs, basically?
No, it's a lot more complex than that.
I'm sure it is.
But yeah, so early on in the lake, when it's in that lake phase before, the reservoir was starting to sediment itself in, kind of losing its capacity a little bit. You would see probably more common sport fish species that you would normally see anglers in the Dayton area going after: largemouth bass, crappie, different sunfish species, rock bass, things like that. It also supports quite a bit of bait fish, which become a critical food source for a lot of the migratory birds that our birders love to see there every spring and fall during the migration periods. So that's a big part of it as well. Also, as it starts transitioning more into a wetland habitat, it becomes a little bit more vital to some of our amphibian species that we've seen declines globally on, becomes a little bit more of an important breeding habitat for them over time, because the amphibian species kind of compete with their breeding. The sport fish that we love to catch also love to eat the eggs of all of these different amphibians. So it does become a critical piece of habitat for them.
And so does the water there wax and wane of like how much water there is there then?
Yeah, I might be getting too technical here.
You're
with this,
fine.
but
Please be technical. You can do that on the show.
I've always looked at systems like this as a pulse wetland system. And what I mean by that is it's not fed by groundwater. It's fed by surface water. And the majority of the surface water that we're getting is from flood storage. So the still water's got to reach that critical flood level, above the base flow of the river to start feeding into the wetland itself. And then from there, it can be exceeded. And that is the height of the berms that are essentially separating the water held in the wetland back over to receding back into the Stillwater River.
So since the water level is changing, it's waxing and waning, does that also change the type of species that you see come and go, or does it stay pretty consistent?
I think it'll probably stay pretty consistent. You'll see some heterogeneity in the habitat itself, just based off of elevations, right? Areas that are a little bit higher are going to hold water a lot less. You'll see different micro vegetation habitats there. Areas that are inundated with water longer term, you'll see some more emergent wetland vegetation that we know and love. Right now, the issue is we're in the midst of fixing the hydrology out there.
Okay, so that leads me to the next question about the levee system and how it's incorporated into the wetlands area. Can you explain some of that to us?
Yeah. So again, going back, it's a man-made system. It mimics a natural system, but there is some man-made infrastructure on here. It's tough to do it without a diagram, but I'll explain it the best I can. So there's a big bend in the Stillwater River just to the north of the wetland itself. And along this bend, there's a channel, essentially accepts water into the wetland from there. Now, closer to the southwest of the wetland, there's actually a designated spot for water to leave the wetland. And it's almost looks like a pier, and there are boards that you can place to either raise or lower the water level. And that's where the water's designed to go out. It's essentially an outlet. So the way I look at a system like this, to simplify it, it's like a slow leaky bathtub, right? It's designed to slowly let water drain back in, let some of that sediment settle out, let the plants and the vegetation in the wetland uptake some of those nutrients that are beneficial to them, but cause harmful algal blooms downriver. And let the soil microbes start to break down some of those heavy metals and other nasty things we see. The problem was the levee that connects to that outlet, just due to more frequent, more intense rain events, started to erode away at 3 key points. So what MetroParks did as an agency, we recognized this as a problem, and we started collecting data. And the way we did that was via a drone. We collected some aerial imagery that's a little special. It's called LiDAR, and it essentially just gives you a surface level view. It takes all the vegetation, everything out, just hard surface view of what the land in the area looks like. So we were able to find these 3 big fissures, and they actually formed right next to the outlet. And it was, instead of a slow leaky bathtub, water is sieving out of the wetland. So that's where you start seeing the drier habitat over time.
And did one of this, an event occur like last April when the levee system was challenged because of we had so much rain last year, or I would say this past spring, I should say, and early into the summer. It was very wet.
Yeah, I think we had a pretty historic rain event last April, where all of our dams that are so critical to the human health aspect of our region were really put to the test. And this storage area, this wetland, is right behind one of those dams. So luckily, there's a U.S. Geological Survey water gauge there. So I'm able to see in real time what the flow rate, what the gauge height is at the river. Base flow over there is about 2.3 feet. When the river crested during that rain event, it was at 48.6 feet.
48?
48.6
and it's normally
feet.
2.3?
2.3 is normally what you'd see in
that's flood
base flow.
stage.
So
Or what's
no,
flood
that's
stage?
base. Flood stage would be about, for the particular levees that we restored, anything where we're getting 15 feet over base flow So when that gauge is reading 17 feet,
You're in flood.
we're probably a pretty good chance that we're topping that berm,
Yeah.
and it's backed up behind the dam as well.
But now you're at 48
Yeah.
feet, which is over double.
Yeah. So
Wow.
and to kind of put that in perspective, the timeline of the project, we finished construction of the fixes where we put a core trench in, packed it with clay and some rock to really stabilize those levees and bring that elevation back up to hold that water back long term. We finished that in late February, and we were able to get seed and erosion control blanket on there. I want to say mid-March, I think. So immediately after that, no time for vegetation to establish. It was under, probably about 30 feet of water.
Wow.
So yeah, and not only that
That's
rain
rough.
event, we hit flood stage 3 more times after that. So it was a huge test.
Yeah. And then on top of it, after all of that rain, then all of a sudden we swung the other way and we had all these dry spells. So, I mean, this was a lose-lose situation, I would think, almost.
Very much so. And I think one thing I'd love to explain here too is, you'll see that you put it very eloquently, that water level, it ebbs and flows, right?
Yeah.
It's not designed to, it's not a lake. But you'd like to see a little bit more water in there in the fall to support fall migration. The problem was I talked about those boards that we could put in to manipulate the water level. We took all of those boards out to drop it as low as it could go, just so we could keep the pressure off those levees. Because those levees need time to settle, they need time to vegetate. So that was a call that we made. Luckily, though, that drier weather kind of helped us because we were able to do some minor fixes from all the pressure that the berms were under with all the large rain events in the spring. We were able to fix those areas. It was never anything serious. Restabilize them, get vegetation on there, and in October we were finally able to put all of the elevation boards back in the structure. So the next big rain event, I'm really anticipating a really wet wetland and a lot of good migratory birds out there.
All right. Well, speaking of birds, we are going to talk more about birds and the wetlands when we come back. We'll be right back with Kevin Ptacek from the Five Rivers MetroParks. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Under the Umbrella. Today we are talking to Kevin Ptacek, who is the Regional Conservation Manager from Five Rivers MetroPark. We are specifically focusing in on the Englewood Metro Park today. And if you watch the first half of Under the Umbrella, we saw lots of volunteers out there helping out in Englewood Metro Park. And I'd like Kevin to explain some of the volunteer opportunities that folks have and what those folks were doing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So the photos that were shown during the first part of the segment were actually our conservation leaders. This is a group of kids that are really into our natural world, and it's a long-standing program through Metro Parks. They do once a month some sort of a learn and lead event to where they're getting their hands on and they're doing things and they're learning about our natural world.
There
and
they are.
Yeah, there they are. Yeah. So that day was an event where we actually went to a different part of the wetland there. And what we were doing was harvesting live steaks. Now, live steaks sound a lot fancier than what they are, maybe. It's essentially just you cut off about a 3-foot section of certain species like willow trees, certain dogwoods, and things like that. And you can actually take those cuttings and hammer them into the ground, and they will sprout new trees. It's a common restoration technique on stream and wetland projects. So the really cool thing was this group of kids harvested about 350 live steaks.
In one day?
In one day.
Wow.
In about 3 hours. And you can tell the weather looks great in that photo for sure. But they were troopers and they did a great job. And then the next volunteer event, they were out at the berms installing these live steaks. And what these live steaks do, they're a very critical part of these projects. It helps us develop a woody root matrix to kind of hold that soil in place and solve that problem that started this in the first place, that erosion. So it's really cool to see them learn about that. You know, they didn't really know what that was, and it was really fun to teach them that and see them get so interested, involved, especially when the weather was so rough. As far as future opportunities, we do a ton through our conservation team. We have a really dedicated group of volunteers that work with us, and we are extremely fortunate for that. Things you'll probably see as the water level changes in the wetland, the vegetation is going to change too.
Okay.
So things that we're going to be doing, tackling invasive species. We're also going to need to put in some of those good plants that we want to see. We purchase plants from outside sources, but we also have a plant propagation program at Cox Arboretum where we start to rear a lot of these native species from seed. So we work with a lot of volunteers when it's time to get them out there to go put some plants in the ground. And I think people really enjoy that aspect of it.
And when you're putting in all these different types of plants in the ground, are you also putting in a certain type of plant to attract, for example, a certain bird or a certain insect, for example?
So we do that.
Okay.
There's another one of our conservation areas out in Trotwood, Spring Run Conservation Area. I think a lot of local people like to use it. It's a great birding spot as well. We actually, partnering with the University of Dayton researchers, they're great to work with, have started an initiative to reintroduce a butterfly that's pretty threatened, the Baltimore checker spot. And they need a very specific, very sensitive wetland plant called Chelone glabra, which is white turtlehead. So we do that for sure, but it really just depends. A lot of times it's like the base level of habitat, and this is why I've always loved plants, is what you put there is what you're going to attract, right? I mean, that's the lowest level of the food chain, and it steps up from there. So a lot of times we're mimicking what we see in similar habitats that we're trying to restore.
So you've mentioned quite a bit about bird watchers coming out there. What types of species are in Englewood Metro Park, and what are most abundant and what are most rare?
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot here. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm an avid birder or a great birder.
I don't know anything about birds, so.
But I do know, some of the species that we love to see, some of the egrets that haven't been seen there in a while. These migratory birds that utilize wetlands like this as a critical stopover habitat during their long journey. So those cattle egrets, those great egrets, I think one of the rarer ones that you would see that you have a likelihood of seeing would be the little blue heron. It's I think we're just at the edge of their range, just at the northern edge of their range. I know people do see them. I think if you ever want to aggravate a birder, just tell them you've seen a little blue heron, because they'll correct you and say you saw something else. They look very similar when they're in their younger stages. They're more adolescent stages. They look very similar to snowy egrets. The one really cool thing, and this was kind of a one-off, I think this happened in 2023. There's a bird called a limpkin, and it is, I think its range is from Florida to Venezuela, and they're very hard to even see there. You see them normally in Georgia and Alabama. Well, sometimes they can get thrown off by heavy storms, and I believe in 2023, a limpkin was spotted at Englewood Metro Park and Island Metro Park. So there's that. I wouldn't mention that as one you should go out and say, hey, I'm going to go see one of those today, because it's very rare, but it was kind of a very neat thing.
So do people like post somewhere where they've seen certain birds and say, hey, this is what's out here? Or I see you have this bird challenge. I'm wondering if that's part of it.
Right.
Part of my question.
So there's the birding community is an awesome community, because they're so habitat focused, because their passion, their hobby relies upon it. So they're always really good stewards of the land. And Englewood Metro Park is probably our best opportunity to cater to that user group. It's a big reason why this project was also taken on. One, we're being good stewards of the land. Two, we're trying to offer these unique experiences to all our user groups that use our parks. There's some really, really cool infrastructure out there for birders. One is ebird.com. And one recommendation I have as a self-proclaimed beginner birder is to do your research. eBird, you can get on, you can go to a specific area, you can go right and say, what birds are in Englewood Metro Park? And they'll have a list of all the sightings of every bird and when they were seen. They also give you a frequency of when those specific species are seen, what month, what week out of the year, which is really neat. So normally when I have my limited time to go out and look for birds, I get on, I see what time of the year, where I'm going. These are the species you see, and I normally pick about 3 or 4 of them, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to try to find these before I leave. Another great tool to use is the Merlin app. And the Merlin app, we actually use it on some of our rapid grassland assessments to get a better understanding of what wildlife is using our habitat. But it can, to a certain degree, isolate bird calls that you're hearing out in the field and help you identify them. Now, it's not perfect, and it's not it's definitely not a substitute for knowing your stuff. But
I'm going to say, like, can you attract that kind of bird if you start playing it on your phone?
I think certain species behaviorally, yeah, it might put them in some kind of a defensive position, more territorial species. But what we normally use it for is, if we can't recognize a call, we'll be able to at least have that background. Bird calls can sound very similar if you're not in tune with that.
Yeah. So what's the birding challenge then?
Oh, so the birding challenge, and unfortunately, it's over.
Oh, okay. Well, for next year.
Next year.
What do people need to know?
Yeah, so it's a great thing that MetroParks does, and it's really catered to anybody at any level of knowledge. It's 30 different specific challenges, and they're kind of broken up into 6 different kind of criteria. Some of those criteria are more about identifying birds. Other ones are about creating habitat, maybe in your own backyard, to support our native bird species. Other ones are getting other people involved in birding. But essentially what it is, it connects our users to our parks and to the wildlife that we have here. And it kind of also allows them to participate in some citizen science work. I mean, we need to know what's out there and what time we're seeing it, and if we're seeing a less of a degree of certain species, these are indicators to failing habitats sometimes. So it's that, and it's just encouraging people to get outside and enjoy the metro parks in a different way. I think if you completed any 6 of the 30, you were automatically put in for a raffle, and there are all sorts of great prizes.
Well, that sounds like even a good family event, even to just get your kids out in nature and to teach them something.
Yeah, my son and I participated. So, yeah.
What kind of birds are you seeing right now as we're going into winter?
So what you'll see out here pretty soon, hoping with getting some water in the basin, one of the things I hear, and I always think of it as that's when winter truly comes.
Yeah, well, we had winter, it seemed like this week.
Yeah, that caught everyone by surprise. But what I really wait for outside of the snow is you'll start hearing the calls of sandhill cranes. Sandhill cranes will start working their way south right around the weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas. There's also a lot of really cool species of duck that you'll see out there. You can see some American coots, American black ducks, ringneck ducks, things like that. It's also a great time to, outside of our migratory birds that we, love, a lot of our winter hangovers, the ones that are staying around. I think one that would be really cool to kind of challenge yourself to look for, it's our small species of owl in the state of Ohio. The saw-whet owl has been seen around the moist woodlands kind of surrounding the wetland. It hasn't been seen there in a couple of years. I think I'd like to challenge people to go out there and see if you can't find a saw-whet owl.
That sounds like a great challenge. And I would like to thank you very much, Kevin, for joining me on this edition of Under the Umbrella. This was all very interesting. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for watching. Until next time, we'll see you again on Under the Umbrella. And if you have an idea, you can always email me at undertheumbrella@wdtn.com. Have a great night.